Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
What's shaking and baking, GSMC Nation? It is the GSMC Football Podcast, and I am host 1 of 2. Ethan, Brice is host 2 of 2. Back again here talking all things football and football accessories. So first and foremost, I got to ask my man Brice, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm kicking it. I'm still doing what I got to do to survive every day, man. Just trying to be making it out here, man. Just staying afloat and just trying to keep a good vibe in my life going.
That's what's up. What did I do this weekend? Don't even remember. Like, this weekend has been kind of a blur. I guess Father's Day. Father's Day is a big time. I don't know why I couldn't somehow remember Father's Day, but yeah. How was Father's Day for you? Because for me, it was pretty cool. Me, my dad, and my sister, we hung out, watched some movies, ate some food, cooked out on the grill. We bought my dad some Birkenstocks, some sandals, comfortable little things. Traditionally, it's not something that, someone like him would wear. But I think he's grown to like them for what they are.
Yeah, man, that's good to hear, man. Yeah, it was good, man. I ordered this thing on Amazon for my dad, so that came in actually on the day of Father's Day, so that was good. And so I was able to get him a gift. I also got him a gift card as well. On top of that, we ate dinner together, had a good conversation, just, bonding, the typical, father-son bonding. So it was good, man. I can't complain.
All right. Well, today on the topic list, we have a few things to go around. So some free agent signings, or should I say some signings of contracts have been done. Somebody's trying to force their way out, and we're going to try and force some people out ourselves. And the NFL is trying to get a hold of the coronavirus before really the season even can consider being started. So first on, up to bat is Jamal Adams. So Jamal Adams, perennial safety for the New York Jets, and probably, if not the best, he's one of the best safeties in the NFL, and somebody who is, I would say, is instant value to any team that he goes to. But as you know, the safety market can be a bit weird and wonky, and safeties aren't as valuable as, say, a cornerback or a wide receiver or a running, or I wouldn't say running back, but they're not one of the most valued positions in the NFL as far as monetary, putting the dollars where they're at. So Jamal Adams in 2019 definitely was fighting for an extension, and it did not happen. And it seems like they were good for a little while, but it does not look to be the case anymore, as he has formally requested a trade out of the New York Jets, and basically has been very vocal on wanting to be shopped around. And he's trying to force his trade now, it seems, maybe to his grown-up hometown team, the Dallas Cowboys. So last week, when predicting, he was in the Dallas area where he grows up, and a fan spotted Adams out of his car Sunday and shouted, "You coming to Dallas?" And the Jet star responded, "I'm trying, bro." So I don't think we've ever seen something quite like this in the NFL. Like, we've had recent things kind of similar. Like, we've seen the Le'Veon thing. We saw the AB thing. It's weird how there's a lot of Steelers players, but we've seen those two things, right? But I don't think we've ever seen this particular thing before, where you're just kind of forcing yourself out. Like, this is it.
Yeah. And, I think, in this situation as well, obviously, if you've been paying attention to the history with the Jets and Jamal Adams, they've kind of had this issue going on where he's had the issue, at least, where he feels like, I'm a top safety in the game. I deserve to get paid. You're not paying me. And he's constantly kind of been on Twitter, kind of been to the media, basically hinting like, hey, you don't pay me. I'm trying to go. I'm trying to leave. I'm trying to dip. And the Jets have always been adamant saying, we're not going to trade you. We're going to work something out. Just stay with us here. And it just feels like them and Jamal are on two different wavelengths. And I think that's why there's such an issue right now between the two of them when it comes to, contract negotiations, et cetera. I mean, listen, when he gave his trade request, he gave 7 teams. So he already knows, listen, I got 7 teams I'm trying to go to. So if you're not going to give it to me, trade into one of them. And if you notice, all of them are all playoff teams except the Cowboys. So clearly he's trying to go from a losing situation to a winning situation, and he wants the Jets to send him to that. But at the same time, the issue is, especially with COVID and the salary cap might come down next year and everything, Jamal Adams is asking for some big money on top of this trade. And I don't know if any of those teams are willing to necessarily pay him the money that he wants and still have enough to maybe retain other guys. So I don't know if Jamal Adams is going to actually be able to get moved to a team he wants to be moved to. Because I always feel like when you always put a list of teams out, of teams that you want to go to, I feel like you also have another list of teams that you'll just, I'll have to talk to them and see. So I don't think that's the only teams that he would go to, but those are probably his preferred teams. And we'll have to see what happens. Because right now the Jets are holding their ground. So we'll have to see if the Jets if Jamal Adams is serious, maybe even about not coming to camp or even playing during the season, would they definitely entertain trade talks?
I think at this point they have no choice but to entertain the trade talks if we are being real about it, because this isn't something that came out of the blue. This isn't something that sounds like it can be rectified really easily, because if it was, they would have done it a little while ago, because maybe they're maybe they're trying to understand what assets they have currently on their team. And that's the due diligence of any sort of, ownership, any sort of front office. They have to know where they can allocate their funds on a yearly basis. And maybe they don't know if putting the money right now into a strong safety or a safety period is the right move, because they may have to pay, of course, Sam Darnold later down the line. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think they were drafted in the same year, or were like a year apart. I can't remember.
I believe they were a year apart. I believe Jamal Adams was maybe 2017.
He's only been in the league for 3 years, so yeah, it has.
Yeah,
it was 2 years apart, or a year apart. That Sam Darnold. So, of course, that means they are still looking towards if Sam Darnold is their guy or not, and if they don't have it, if that's not their guy, of course, they'll look elsewhere. But if he is somebody that they plan to keep in the future, the quarterback money has to be there at some point, right? And I don't think Jamal Adams is a guy who wants to be in a situation where he may get a good contract later, like up front, but then have to keep, negotiating it down to help free up the salary cap. It doesn't sound like he's that type of guy. It sounds like he wants all the money that he can make at the time, because football is a fleeting sport. You never know when your time is up. So I never really get mad at players trying to capitalize on all the money they could possibly earn. And I think a lot of Jets fans are upset about this. And if I was a fan, like if Alvin Kamara tried to push his way out, I'd be really sad. I don't think I'd ever blame him, though. I think that's the difference. I think a lot of people are using this to slight him, and I guess everybody has their opinion. Everybody can feel the way they want to feel. I just don't think that, being mad at him for trying to get more money, because it's not like he was like saying, okay, Jets, I don't want to stay with you no matter what. Get me out of here. This was more so of a situation where, if you can't put up the money, put me somewhere to where they can, because I'm trying to get paid now. And who knows why that is? Maybe it's lack of patience. Maybe it's he wants security in his money flow, or whatever the case may be. And maybe he just wants to go play for a contender. Keep in mind, he's been keeping that defense afloat for as soon as he got there, because that team has been not good for numerous years, probably since the Rex Ryan era, they have not been good. And we don't know if they'll be good next year. We don't know. Like, there's signs of small promise, like, but we don't know. Like, when Le'Veon got there, things were tough. Their offense was really, really bad last year, and their defense is really something that always has kept them, afloat these days. But I don't think that we live in an era of time anymore, or correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the era of time that we live in now with sports, where people really feel like, or should I say players feel like they have a lot more leverage in how they want to move and maneuver out of things, are completely different than maybe even 5 years ago, because this isn't like he's up for franchise tagging, right? He's not up for that yet. He's got like a year and some change left on his deal. And he is trying to push, so in reality, it's much easier to think of a way to get him traded out of there here than potentially doing a sign and trade as a franchise tag. So in reality, he's kind of playing this card earlier than we usually see. And I think a lot of people aren't used to that. I think a lot of people just think, if it's franchise tag time, he's probably going to hold out. People are used to holdouts by this point, right? But I don't think anybody's used to this, to where you have such a larger amount of time than usual left on your deal, and you signed it, quote unquote, and people say you're obligated to finish out the deal. And technically, no matter if he's traded or not, he'll have to finish out the deal even if he plays or not. So I'm curious to see how this works out. I'm kind of curious to see how Le'Veon feels about all this, just because it's not exactly the same situation. Of course, Le'Veon was getting franchise tagged year in, year out, and he wanted more security and more guaranteed dollars. But there are a little bit of similarities within probably why he wants to do this now. And I wonder if they talk about this, or if they're even cool, because I would imagine this could be considered a really, really bad locker room move.
Yeah. And, it's also a weird time in terms of, with everything going on. Just doing holdouts to me is weird right now, because with the COVID and, as far as we know, the season will go as planned, but we don't know if something will change. And it's like, is this really the best time to be trying to demand contracts? Is this the best time? Because I guess I can understand it from the perspective of this. If the salary cap does go down next year, I can see why you I need to try to get my money now, because next year they ain't going to have the money to give me anything. No team's going to have the money to give it to me, so I have to take a lesser deal. But at the same time, it's just like, you really want to cause that type of a headache for a team right now that, with everything going on in the league, do you really want to be a major story with everything that's going on in the world today? So it's kind of one of those types of situations. I mean, they also say, it was funny, I was listening to somebody who was talking about Jamal Adams' situation. He was talking about how one of the reasons why this is a big story is just because he's in a very big market, which is New York. And obviously, New York, when stuff comes out of New York, it's big. But at the same time, there's literally nothing else to report on. So, of course, if a player requests a trade, it's going to be a big deal. Maybe in hindsight, if this was a regular offseason, it would be like, oh, yeah, he wants to trade. And then we'll put it in the headline, but it'll be like a secondary headline, not like a main headline like it is now. So, I mean, it's just a question. Like I said, the same thing with Dalvin Cook in Minnesota with him holding out. Is this really a good time to be trying to hold out? That's one of my questions.
I don't know. I feel like the timing is fair because, for one, you don't know if a season's coming, right? You don't know, because we really don't know at all. No one knows anything if a season's coming or not. And why I mean a season's coming, they can plan all they want to have the season start up, but there's no chance, there's no ideology, there's no roadmap to tell us this will actually work out. Even in the NBA, which I don't know why, this is the fourth week in a row where I find the NBA, comparison. In the NBA, they're doing the bubble. The NFL is not doing the bubble. And even in the NBA bubble, this could not work out, right? Things can escalate to a point to where this may not work out, and they will have to shut down again, because who knows what happens in August or September on how things really move. Right, we're still a little bit ways away from the NBA even coming back to practice as a team. So we don't know what that's going to look like. We have no idea what football is going to look like. And from all recent accounts, we haven't had good news really about the moving forward of football since they started letting, staff members back into facilities. But ever since then, we have been seeing news about people get COVID, come back with COVID. College teams are filled with people, or they're quarantining themselves for 14 days. This is going to be an ongoing struggle that we won't really have any sort of control over. And it's up to the NFL, the NCAA, whoever to figure out what is the happy medium. Because we talked about it last week as we wrap this up, that, what happens if, God fearing, what happens if Patrick Mahomes gets COVID-19? Is we sitting him down? Are they even reporting that? Imagine in a competition sport, a sport where every person, every personnel change matters drastically on how the games will play out. You're trying to tell me in good conscience that you think that Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs are going to sit here and tell us on a Friday that Patrick Mahomes has contracted coronavirus and he is not going to play on a Sunday game. I just don't see it happening. They're going to wait it out. They're going to say he's asymptomatic. Fine. We just going to have to deal with it. And we're going to play him. And on Tuesday next week, we just going to be like, dang, he had coronavirus. We're going to have to figure it out from there. There's just no way they're going to sit people down for 2 weeks straight. It's going to be smaller amounts of time every time because the NFL is going to travel to games, right? They're not going to do a bubble system. I don't know how this is going to work out. So folks are probably thinking hey, if that season really don't go out, at least I got this guaranteed money though. So, but let's take our first break and we'll come back to more money talks. It's the GSMC.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
We're back, GSMC Nation. We were just talking about the Jamal Adams basically force out, get me out of here. I'm ready to go. I'm ret to go, And now we're moving on to another kind of money situation. Probably a better sign for the Cowboys fans out there. Dak Prescott signs his franchise tag tender with the team. So he put pen to paper on this exclusive franchise tag deal. And this move seemed to be expected after the team's virtual offseason ended. If Prescott planned to hold out beyond the spring program, which the quarterback eschewed, he wouldn't have signed the tender, and the signing means Prescott will attend Mike McCarthy's first training camp in Dallas. And both sides have until July 15th to work out a long-term contract, or Prescott will play the 2020 season on a franchise tag, and the Cowboys could use the tag again next year if a multi-year pact isn't reached. So the Cowboys, of course, they've used the franchise tag 8 times since 1993 on 6 different players. So DeMarcus Lawrence, Anthony Spencer, each twice. And that was per NFL research. The Dallas also worked out long-term deals in 3 of the previous 7 instances. So Lawrence, Des Bryant, and Cam Hamlin. So, and 2 of those 3 long-term deals were signed up on the July 15th deadline. So COVID-19 isn't really necessarily affecting how things are maneuvered. And we still had the draft on time. We still did all the things on time. So the timetable is still set the same. So, Brice, what do you think is going to happen in Dallas with Dak Prescott? Do you think he signs a long-term deal? Do you think he plays out the contract or the franchise tender? What is your gut reaction after this?
I mean, I think he's going to sign it. To me, I still don't think the Cowboys are going to give him what he wants. I think they're going to look at it like he signed it. You mean, listen, if you want to start trying to skip, that's on you. But I don't think he's going to sign. I feel like the money he's asking for, I highly doubt he's going to come down off of it. And I just don't think Jerry wants to give him that money. I think Jerry wants to do the sign the 1 year. Let's play it out. You still have a top 5, top 6 salary. And let's just see what happens. And then we can reconvene maybe during the season or after the season and talk about it again next year. Obviously, this is one reason why people have always said people want the franchise tag eliminated because of this particular reason. Because obviously, sometimes teams can take advantage of that. And I think that's what Dak's probably trying to do. The clock is running for him. But I think that they know what they're trying to do, what they want to do moving forward. And we just got to hope and see what happens for the best. Because for me, I think, Dak's, like I said, he's in a position where he has some leverage, but at the same time, he doesn't have leverage. So it just really depends on just how the negotiations are going, and just will Dak be willing to bring down his price and settle for something he could be satisfied with. And then also, to me, it'll be interesting to see what is going to be the length of this deal. Is it going to be a 5 year? Is it going to be a 3 year? Like, what is it going to be?
Well, considering that the new CBA, the money is supposed to go up at some point. And or should I say the TV deal, not the CBA. But the TV deal, the money is supposed to go up. That means there'd be more money around. And Dak Prescott is trying to time his basic free agency around the same time that the TV deal would make the cap go up and, get more money. So he's not trying to be locked down in a 5 year, 6 year deal. And I can respect that. Like, he is trying to, outsmart the game, right? He's trying to outgame the game. And I think most people who are sensible about this sees what he's trying to do. And this isn't saying that it's all about wanting $30 million a year. It's more about the length, right? If they're going to pay him $30 million a year, they want him for a longer period of time. And he's saying that you should pay me for what I've done and what I can do for the time being, but I don't want to be locked down in a contract for that long. And, we look at guys who got fully guaranteed money back in the day, or not back in the day, not too long ago, like a Kirk Cousins, who his deal was not nearly as, it was all guaranteed, but it wasn't super, super crazy money. Like, he wasn't getting $30 million a year fully guaranteed. It was close to like 21 million guaranteed fully. So we have to remember that the franchise tag is a starting place. It's not to say that he's given in. And I think a lot of people are going to look at this and say, well, at least he's coming to camp. Maybe this means that he'll suck it up and he'll play through his contract, because that's what normal people are expected to do if they sign a contract and they can play through it or whatever. But this is not necessarily the same thing. And there's a lot more money on the line, and there's a lot more incentives on why he would want to do that. And, normal people can't foresee, their company's money going up to thus mean that they're going to have to pay their employees more. That doesn't exist. But of course, that's because, a lot of people aren't in unions, or unions aren't as good as they used to be. And the players union hasn't been, there's been a lot of talks on whether or not them signing the new CBA this time around, or, holding out, should have happened. And considering what happened with COVID-19, a lot of people are saying that maybe they're lucky to be able to sign this, because you never know what could have really transpired if they didn't sign it on time. Because right as soon as they signed it, we really started to get this COVID news really, really rapidly, really quickly. So I am a person to believe that Dak is going to find a way to get his personal deal done and get less time. but I don't know if he'll get the 3-year deal. I think he'll get 4. I think he'll have to settle for 4 personally. But if you think he is going to get he's going to go and get a deal that's good for him, what do you think the deal is actually going to be, Brice?
Well, I think that for Dak, if what we're hearing is true that he wants north of $35 million, I think maybe 2-3 years, like 3 years, maybe about, I guess, 90, 98, 99, somewhere around that. That'll give him close to 35 probably a year, or maybe a little bit north. I think that's probably what he's looking for. Because remember, Kurt got 3 for 88, I believe. So he's definitely looking to get more than that. So I'm thinking 3 years, 95 plus for Dak. And he's probably expecting at least a good 75 to 80% of the money to be guaranteed as well. So, and then, like I said, by the time, or like it will be known, by the time his contract ends in that situation, he would still be in his 20s. He would have another 3 years under his quarterback. And then if he wins a Super Bowl or makes more playoff appearances, make the playoff runs, win the division, then he can now say, well, you just paid me that. Now I could ask for over 40, especially after Mahomes and Deshaun will have their contracts by then as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's what he's banking on. He's trying to get into that Patrick Mahomes bracket, that Deshaun Watson bracket, that Mitchell Trubisky bracket. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, the same sort of tax bracket he's trying to, or the same sort of, contract bracket he's trying to get into with the rest of the young guys and make that money. Because if you've been following football for the past few years, right, Patrick Mahomes is a Super Bowl champion, a first time and like a basically rookie season MVP. And he has everything ahead of him at this point. He's going to get Steph Curry money in the NFL. He's going to be the guy. Him and Lamar Jackson are going to walk to the bank, and it is going to be all smiles. It is going to be a show in the offseason. It's going to be a show to see how much money these two young men are going to accumulate in those offseason talks, because I just don't see them getting franchise tagged. They have no choice, especially if Lamar Jackson shows no signs of regression. If he doesn't regress and he basically stays or improves as the same player, no question, he's going to touch like $200 million. Like, he's going to touch it. Patrick Mahomes has no choice but to touch $200 million, or else it's a sell job. It's a scam. He's getting schemed out of money. It is going to be insane. So Dak wants to at least be in the same tax bracket to a certain extent. He may not get $200 million. I don't think Dak Prescott belongs in that even elite conversation, because Patrick Mahomes and Lamar in their own right bring something to the game that I don't believe Dak Prescott has the capability of bringing. At least he hasn't shown it yet. But, Dak may want 150. Dak may want 160. And if he can prove it on the field and he times it right, I don't see why he wouldn't, because we've seen quarterbacks that have done less than Dak get, top 10 type of quarterback money. And that's just kind of how the position works. So we can't keep using the idea of, he doesn't play like a Russell Wilson, or he doesn't have the same statistics, or he's not as good. Why does he think he deserves top 5 money? Well, it's because everybody else who's not as good as him are getting money that's kind of close to where the ballpark is for top 5. That's just where the position is at. What do you have to say about that, Brice?
I mean, yeah, that's where the position would be. And obviously, if you're a quarterback and the team considers you a franchise quarterback, and your team's perspective of you, you're going to ask for top franchise quarterback money because of that specific reason right there. So he'll definitely approach the tight brackets because of that. I mean, it's just one of those things. Listen, the market resets. So the market resets for franchise quarterbacks. Then the next quarterback who wants to go is going to try to reset it on his end. Or at least you'll have the occasional quarterback who will be okay with just taking close to it, because you have those guys. But for the most part, most new quarterbacks, especially like I said, at Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, they're, especially if they continue to do great things, they're going to definitely, want the biggest amount of money they can get and have that mega deal, because that's one thing Lamar and Patrick Mahomes have that Dak doesn't have. They, at least Mahomes and Lamar can say they're MVPs, and Patrick Mahomes can say, I want a Super Bowl. That, all he can say is, I've won a division title and I've won one playoff game, but he doesn't have anything else. So he needs to be able to add something else to his resume to then also continue to justify getting that mega deal. If he does get the deal current during the next few years, if he's able to sign something before this franchise tag deadline, and then add a big accolade onto that to then say, well, I did this, so you got to pay me that.
Yeah, for sure. I do think that he has to keep improving. Last year was a step in the right direction for sure, especially in the beginning of the season. Things kind of got a little rocky near the tail end, but I think the Cowboys in general were a little rocky. I won't necessarily say that was all Dak, but there's clearly some still room for improvement from him as a passer, as a decision maker, and as a leader on that offense. So the franchise tag is signed, and we'll find out July 15th whether or not they can come up with a deal, or he's just going to take the franchise tag and keep it pushing and wait till next year. But we are going to move into our next break, and coming out of it, we are going to be talking about the NFL wanting players to stop hanging out, essentially. Keep to yourself. This is the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We'll be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, GSMC back here, and we're talking about COVID-19 once again. Someone hit the do 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 do. We need sound effects here at the GSMC. It'll make things a lot more whimsical, a little bit more fun. Anyways, hit the sad noises out here. Spam F in the chat. COVID-19 conversations. Here we go. So, across the football universe, we have seen an influx of different football-related programs, activities, changes really be affected due to COVID-19 in the recent last 2 to 3 weeks, where we're seeing universities, we're seeing programs having to halt, voluntary workouts because they have too many players on a quarantine, self-quarantine basis. So everybody else kind of has to hold out because we don't know exactly when that will be free, and they're on 14-day waiting period and see how things turn out. The NFL is also looking at this because we recently saw a few weeks ago about Dallas and Houston, and now we're hearing about Tampa Bay, where a lot of players are showing up to facilities, or a lot of players and coaching staff are showing up to things testing positive for COVID-19. That doesn't mean they're out being, frivolous or doing things they're not supposed to do, but that's just how contagious this virus is and how easily contracted it can be. And you don't want to have a point in time where you have to basically shut down the season before it starts. And at least that's the worst fear for NFL. They don't want to have to do that at all. But to start that, the NFL has not had any off-season sort of workouts generated by the NFL forced on the players. The players, though, have been coming out and essentially hanging out with each other. Sure, it's a part of the off season that a lot of players do. And this is across all sports where they have off seasons, they have to work out and they get together with people that they enjoy or teammates and they work on their game, try to build chemistry early on. And that's something that they've always kind of done. So this is nothing normal, or this is nothing, abnormal. But in the midst of this pandemic, the NFL advises players to stop hanging out, essentially, stop working out together for the betterment of the season. So the medical director of the NFL Players Association is advising this, and he put out a statement that to please be advised that it is in our consensus medical opinion that in light of the increase of COVID-19 cases in certain states, that no players should be engaged in practicing together in private workouts. He also said that the goal is to have all players and your families as healthy as possible in the incoming months. So around 10 NFL teams have reported positive coronavirus tests for at least one of their players, and source told ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, prompting the NFLPA to release the statement. So the NFL and NFLPA share a database that updates each time a player reports positive test. And there's been an uptick over the last 2 weeks. Teams can administer tests to players who are already rehabbing injuries in the team facility and thus permitted to be there, or when a player discloses symptoms. So, Brice, I'd like to ask you, where do you think this is going to take the NFL season thus far? Because this seems like a step back, and it's not to say it's in the step in the wrong direction for the safety of the players, but it does sound like a kind of obstacle in the path to a regular season that will make sense, so to speak, a regular season that won't jeopardize players and their families.
I mean, I think at first it's a response to the spike in cases in multiple states. Obviously, they see, okay, cases are going up and players are getting together. Okay, a little bit dangerous. Might need time to chill out. All right, guys, let's reel it back in. And they maybe just be like, listen, y'all got training camp in almost 3 weeks, 4 weeks, however long. Y'all can, we can just wait, just make sure you stay safe, and especially with the whole Cowboys in Houston recently getting tested and having cases, Tampa Bay assistant getting a case. I think they're seeing that as well and thinking, okay, we don't want all of our players to get COVID-19 or all of our staff to get COVID-19 because of OTAs. Now, I do think the NFL has the mindset of just, listen, we're going to go through with what we're going to do this season. We're going to go with the protocols. We're going to try our best, and we just going to have to see what happens because, we are not going to lose billions of dollars to not play the game. But, I think that's why they made this decision to kind of tell players, hey, let's just not do all that, because last thing you need is one player getting affected, then hanging out with other players, and they get affected, and they get other people infected, and then it just spreads. Especially, again, with the cases spiking in multiple states. So I think they're just like they said, they're trying to be flexible and adaptive during this time because they understand things will change. So we can't just sometimes stick to the same thing and just say, well, screw whatever happens, we're just going to do it. They're trying to show that they can be flexible and they can adjust if needed.
What do you think happens with college football, as there are a lot more teams? There's 130, and I have a feeling that not all 130 teams or programs will be active, especially at the start of the season. I don't know how they plan how it's going to work out, but they do seem confident that they will start the season on time, and that's with or without people who can catch up or be ready, I should say.
Well, I think in college football, it's like I said, it's a different situation, different scenario. I mean, remember, you just had 30 LSU players get quarantined. Now, the thing they may look at is this. Okay, we have 30 players now. That's like a quarter of a college football team. Okay, it's before the season, because the season doesn't start till September or like the last week of October, early September. So they're kind of in a position of, we still have time, so there's no reason to like cancel anything. But it's like and also I think they're looking at, well, once we get all these players in, and then they do the 3 week training, I believe they said, I think it was 3 or 6 weeks of training, and then we'll see how it goes during that, when we can keep an eye on the players, when we can monitor the players, see what they're doing. Then I think college football will then decide what's the best course of action going into the season. I just think, you can almost sit there and say it's expected to have this because these kids are coming back to college. You don't know what they've been doing before they were in college. So you can't just say, okay, we have all these numbers on teams. We can't have the season. Like we have yet to see, okay, if we have our protocol set up and we have our system set up, how does it go in terms of players, cases, and everything? Because if you think about a college athlete, it's different. College athlete, you usually live at your campus. So you're going to be in the area where everybody else is going to be. It's not an NFL player where they can go play their game, go to the club, then fly to another state the next morning. Your college, you know where they're going to be. So I think the college football committee and just everybody who's involved in these decisions are going to look at, okay, when all these cases and people quarantine, all that passes by, because I'm sure you're going to hear many more college teams have big number of players that have COVID-19. And I think they're going to look and just see, okay, once we put them into our protocol and our system, we're going to see what actually ends up happening. And that will, I think, determine which teams participate. Because I feel like in terms of the Power Five, I think Power Five, they're going full steam ahead. Everybody's playing. Group of Five, I'm not sure. Power Five, they're like, listen, we need all of you to play. So we got to all be on the same page here. So we'll have to see what happens.
Well, let's keep in mind here, I feel like it's easier for the NFL to figure it out because maybe their mindset is this, that they know or should expect that players will come back with positive tests with COVID-19. There's just probably, everybody's going to get it at some point, especially with how different states have been open for longer or have had lenient rules or have basically said the rules don't matter anymore. And that is something to be expected. And then, of course, they're going to try and do the social distancing rules to keep it in bay or keep it at bay, and also probably quarantine the people who show up to camp with the symptoms or have shown symptoms or have it asymptomatically. They'll quarantine them and wait it out and keep it pushing until basically everybody is in an NFL sort of their own version of a loose incubator. So it won't be like a bubble in the NBA, but they're going to keep things very close knit. I'm sure they're going to have a lot of rules to what you can and can't do. And I think the NFL players are more inclined to participate in rules that will probably restrict where they go during the season. But hey, this is what you need to do in order to get your paycheck and get paid and all that. And if you want to play right, you're going to do the rules. College and youth sports, I feel like it'll be tougher because, for one, once that kid is done with, practice, a game, there's no telling what they can go do, right? There's no monetary benefit. Of course, there could be problems with the team if they find out what a player has been doing. I just find it easier for a younger guy, a guy who's in college, where basically there's just imagine if schools are planning to have kids on campus. Now, granted, some people are having online classes, some people aren't. And I would imagine that if you're on the football team, they're doing fully online classes. What do you think? Do you think they're doing online or they're doing in person?
I would think that'd be the smart thing to do. Unless they're going to try to sit here and say we're going to try to make it as normal as possible.
Right, because to be fair, a lot of athletes take online classes that I've talked to anyway. They do a lot of online classes, and they kind of just live in a big old house with a lot of their teammates. So I don't think that is going to be a huge change if they all have to do online classes. Now, of course, if they're trying to take degree paths or have classes that they want to take that require you to go to class, like a lab or anything like that, I'm sure they'd have to do what they need to do for their degree because, this is a quote-unquote student-athlete thing. So besides that, I'm sure a lot of college students, especially the ones who aren't really that afraid of this virus or should be, they're going to be going out. They're going to be having parties. Football players, athletes, they love to party. They like to be the face of the party. They like to be the face of attention. This is the prime time where they are kind of the kings on campus, for lack of a better term. And it's really hard for me to see majority of the players not try to take advantage of this, this time that they'll really never get back in their life. Like, college only exists one time. At least your undergrad only really exists one time. And that experience is something that they may not want to miss. And that might be some issues for other people down the road. But I'm sure they have some sort of guidelines as well, because everybody has to come up with a plan, I would imagine.
Yeah. I think that would obviously be the most ideal and smart thing to do, just in any organization, any league, any age group. Obviously, each situation is different, so you have to adjust accordingly to it. One of the biggest things any league can do during this time is just be flexible and be adaptive and be open-minded, because what you may have wanted planned or what you may think would work in June may not work in July, may not work in August, may not work when the season starts. And so you got to be ready to be making those changes on the fly. And you really are honestly going to see which leagues and which organizations are best with change, who can adjust to change, who know how to adjust when needed, and which ones struggle as well.
For sure. And I think that we'll see it from a college level. I'm personally, I do feel like youth sports is going to be in trouble. I don't see how they can put in the resources, infect the policies in order, or enact the policies and enforce them in the same way and same fashion as the NFL or even college football or anything like that. It's just going to be too difficult. I think youth sports programs will probably still happen. I just think that it will not be. It shouldn't happen personally. Like, that's just my opinion. I don't think it should happen. I think that they should wait this whole thing out, because these are our kids here. These are people's kids, and a year off of sports isn't going to kill them, isn't going to hurt their chances, especially if everybody's kind of in a similar boat. I just think that it's the safest play that they can do. Like, it's one thing if, you're 1 year away from going to the NFL draft. It's one thing if you're already in your college seasons and you're basically auditioning for a chance to get in the NFL. It's one thing if you're already getting paid and you have guaranteed money, or you got to keep getting the check. People still have to go to work. So that's one thing. That's the way you live. You have to keep surviving. But kids aren't getting paid to go play sports, especially at the youth level. Sit them down for a little bit, man. It'll be okay. They don't have to go play baseball. Maybe it's time to go hang out with your kids now. I guess. Find a different thing. I don't know. Get them into golf. I think they can socially distance golf a little bit better than most sports.
Yeah, so you might see golf numbers go up.
For sure. I'm thinking about getting into it personally. I don't know. It's a lot of money to get into it, but I'm open. But we're going to take another break, and coming back, we're going to be talking about trades that probably won't happen, but it'd be interested to see if they did happen. That's coming up, GSMC.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Okay, last segment of the day of the podcast, of your evening, morning, afternoon, night, late night, early morning. Whenever you're listening to us, this is the last segment. Brice, you brought this up. I thought it was an interesting idea because, honestly, I don't really ever think about sports in similar fashion. So, lay it on us. What is the criteria? What are we doing for the last segment?
So, basically, obviously, there's players that, around the league that we may think, oh, if they were somewhere else, they would be better, or they're not getting treated the same, or they're not, getting the proper, or they're not in the best situation, for them. And also maybe just for salary cap reasons, maybe you're thinking future-wise, like, oh, I don't think they could pay him long-term, so they might need to get rid of him, et cetera, et cetera. or maybe just for draft value. Like, maybe you're a fan of a team and you may think personally that on your team, hey, we might need to get rid of this guy in a couple of years or whenever because of so-and-so reason, insert reason here. So we're just going to basically go into this and we're just going to give some players that we think should be traded or we think should look into maybe wanting to be traded based off their current situations and the future outlook with their current teams. It can be your favorite team. It can be a team that you maybe see to see a player from the other team. It just all depends on you. It doesn't matter which player. You just got to pick a player, give a reason, and we'll go from there.
Okay. I'll go first then, because there's one player in particular that I thought of that a lot of people like to talk about. He's from the Dirty South. I'm sorry, Brice. What if Julio was not in Atlanta? Because it sounds like every time somebody is complaining, either Falcon side or not, that Julio as a player is being wasted away in the A-town, in the big Atlanta, the big Dirty South. My guy, how does this make you feel, for one? And two, we'll get into where I think he would be really successful in. And let's, disclaimer, Julio would be successful anywhere he would go, but where I think he'd have the best chance to win a ring. Brice, what is your initial reaction to me putting Julio on this trade list?
I mean, first, it will never happen because Atlanta would burn the whole Fowler Bench facility down. It's not going to happen. Julio's not going anywhere. But I mean, hey, if people say, literally, you'll hear this about any great player that they haven't won a championship. Oh, they're wasting their potential. They're wasting their prime. It happens all the time. So listen, because if we had won that Super Bowl back in 2016, nobody would say that because then we won a Super Bowl. But since we didn't and we don't have anything, we don't know if we're going to get a ring anytime soon. We're just going to go ahead and say, yeah, Julio's wasting his prime. Because literally you always see all these amazing players who haven't maybe won the big game. And now we think, oh, they were wasted. In the grand scheme of things, they weren't necessarily wasted in terms of if they're still one of the greatest players of all time. Because if we look at Tony Gonzalez, he never won anything in terms of the big ring. But we look at him as a top maybe 3-5 tight end in NFL history. So, and I'm already seeing some people have Julio crack their top 5 of greatest wide receivers of all time. So, to me, I'm not too worried about it.
But the thing is, this is about potential. This is about saving their professional careers, or should we say resurrecting their professional careers in a sense, or rejuvenating it and giving them better championship windows or extending their window by moving them to a different team. Because it's not to say that their talent was taken for granted or it was wasted per se. It's more so that maybe their championship window has closed on the certain team that they're on. And that means that it's time for a change of scenery, so to speak. So here's where I believe Julio could go. And it would be really, really something special to see. Something that I would love to see. And it possibly could lead into Super Bowls. All right. Now hear me out. Put Julio on the Eagles. That might be something crazy. Now, the Eagles went and got a plethora of receivers, got people healed up. I still don't know who their guy is. Like, it's not going to be, it's not going to be who they have there. Not right now. There's too many injuries. We don't know who their guy is. If they had Julio via trade, we know who their guy is. And, of course, Carson Wentz has somebody now that he can trust insurmountably to catch the ball. He will be open. He will get the ball. And it would make things easier on him. And I think having people to make things easier on him would help him return to basically MVP form. And not to say that he played pretty well down the stretch last year before the concussion. So I think that's the team. I think that if he were to go to someone like San Francisco, it's a wrap. San Francisco would be the best team in the NFL. Cause you can't stop their run game anyway. And what are you going to do? Send the house and then leave Julio and George Kittle out there to to just do dominance. Like, I'm trying to not make these teams super overpowered. Like, of course, if you put them on the Chiefs, it would be a game over, but that's not fun.
They about to win the chip for the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that he would be really nice pairing with someone like Aaron Rodgers, who basically has had Devontae Adams, and that's it on the outside for a long time. So Devontae Adams and Julio Jones with Aaron Rodgers, we might see Aaron Rodgers play till he's 40. Like, we don't know. That is something that I think. So Julio's my first guy. Give me one for yourself, sir.
Oh, I think if things don't change in terms of winning when his contract's up, I think Christian McCaffrey could be on the move, or should look to be on the move, potentially. Because he's a great running back talent. He's going to be a guy who does everything, carries the team, but gets no recognition, no credit in terms of wins, winning percentage, playoff success, or anything like that. And obviously a running back has a short shelf life, so he needs to probably try to start winning something pretty soon here. In Carolina, we don't know when they're going to be in position to start winning soon. Because if Matt Rule doesn't work out, that's another head coaching tenure, even though he's only had one, which is Ron Rivera, that would have failed. And boom, now he's like 28, 29. And now we're hitting that part where nobody wants to pay running backs. We hope Christian McCaffrey will still be healthy and still productive by that point in his career. But he has to look at, well, if Carolina's not going to be the best chance to win, who will? And I think a team that would definitely be very interesting if they were able to acquire him, I think, would be a team. And I'm going to go with the team that you actually just picked out, the Philadelphia Eagles as well, because now obviously Miles Sanders is nice. Ajayi is nice. Everything like that is nice. But imagine that Carson Wentz had a guy like Christian McCaffrey in the backfield with him as well. I mean, again, it's just like, listen, you've seen McCaffrey can carry an offense, need 100 rushing, 100 receiving if he has to. And then on top of that, based off if, Eagles receivers and everything and weapons can stay healthy, they got the 2 tight ends. The Eagles offense, they basically would be New England when they had Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez and et cetera. So, but also people forget about those teams is that they always had that great, even though they didn't have that guy, they always had great running back play. And that was one of the reasons why they were always in it at that time during that tenure of tight end. And the Eagles, I think if they added Christian McCaffrey, that would give them the ability to still be able to pull that off and still get enough in the receiver position to be successful. Another team also that I think could potentially use Christian McCaffrey's services and maybe push them, up the ladder. Imagine Christian McCaffrey on a Pittsburgh Steelers. I think, listen, James Conner is fine, but he's not Christian McCaffrey. If Ben Roethlisberger could get Christian McCaffrey, and then if Juju could be just a good receiver, again, it's not the 3 Bs, like it could be, but it's not. But it's you have a guy, at Christian McCaffrey who can basically do everything Le'Veon could do, and you can necessarily say he does it better than Le'Veon. You have one of the top offensive lines, so he's going to have great blocking. Ben Roethlisberger, loves throwing it, so he'll be definitely involved in passing routes and everything like that. And I think Christian McCaffrey will look good in the black and gold. The black and yellow. I think he will look great in that. And so those are a couple of teams right there. I think for Christian McCaffrey that he could end up and really provide a spark and really push them forward in terms of a championship push.
Okay, so Christian McCaffrey, I think that's somebody who it's hard for me to look like the Panthers just brought out the Brinks truck for and would trade. But these are pretty unrealistic anyway, so it's all about the fun and the thought process. So I think I have one that I can think of right now that is, all right, so hear me out, right? What if the Bears traded Khalil Mack to these select teams? The Texans, the Miami Dolphins, the New Orleans Saints, or Minnesota. So it would never happen to where they trade to Minnesota because that's in division. In your division. They would never do that. But let's say that they're trying to get off this contract because in reality their rebuild may come sooner rather than they think. And they're going to try and get a fresh start. And Khalil Mack, by that time, he would be probably 33, 32 when his contract is up, I think. So if they traded him to, let's say, the Texans, right? The Texans start to really, really invest in their defense because they've already decided that Deshaun Watson was their guy, of course. And maybe this whole David Johnson and, Brandon Cooks thing, it's successful. And then they just build through the draft from there. J.J. Watt isn't getting any younger, and we don't know what level of J.J. Watt are they going to get even this year. So trading for a guy like that, putting some pieces together, because I'm sure you'd have to cough up at least a first rounder and maybe even a second rounder in a few drafts to get him. But that sounds like somebody who the Texans could use to give another boost on the edge rush and really, really attack all the defenses. And in a division like the AFC South, where things can get kind of fickle and you don't really know who is who and where each team is really as a competition standpoint, that could really bring that certain edge that the Texans would need to get over someone like the Colts or even the Titans, because even though the Titans had a really good year altogether, we still don't really know exactly what a full year of Tannehill looks like. We don't know if their defense is going to be the same level of intensity that they had shown in the playoffs, and sort of those things. So I think the Texans would be really, really interesting if they were to trade for Khalil Mack. The Saints, I said, for, this is my team, and I'd love to see Khalil Mack on the other side of Cam Jordan. That would be ridiculous. It probably would never happen. And Minnesota, just because it sounds like he would be Mike Zimmer's guy. I just think that he's a guy that Mike Zimmer would really enjoy. And I wouldn't see why he wouldn't, as anybody would want a Khalil Mack on their team, as pass rushers are probably second most sought after position after quarterbacks, I would assume. But Brice, give me another one, or tell me how you feel about that, and then give me your one, and we can wrap things up.
What you're saying definitely makes a good point. It's funny. I remember, obviously we were talking about earlier in the show about Jamal Adams and who he wanted to be traded to, and I saw a tweet. They were talking about Houston. They said, if I'm a GM, I'm calling Houston. You see how Bill O'Brien be dealing. you probably could get half his roster for Jamal Adams, knowing how he deal. So I might want to call him up, see what I can get. Give me Deshaun in first round. We got it. Oh, that's a great deal, So, that might be somebody they would need to look into if they did that. So for me, another person, well, I think he's not a household name like he used to be, but he's a little older, but he's still a starting corner in this league. And I just look at this as more for just a Super Bowl push type of aspirations kind of guy. I think Patrick Peterson should look into getting a trade from the Cardinals, because he's getting older, but he's still, like I said, a starting corner in the league. And I think he should want to try to go to a Super Bowl contender and just try to win a ring in his last couple of years.
I mean, he did try last year, though. I think there was rumors that the Saints were trying to get him, but the money wasn't right, or something wasn't right about it. They couldn't get it together.
Yeah. So I think he's someone that should look into it. Definitely look into it. I could definitely see a Kansas City using him. I could definitely see him being effective in Kansas City. I would say Baltimore, but their secondary is pretty much stacked. But I would also say Baltimore, if they had some room for him, he definitely could be used there. He just seems like someone who would go to a really good organization to me. He'll go to that organization that has well run, has a great history, maybe even a Green Bay potentially, an organization like that, and try to win a championship there at one of these prestigious and historic organizations. And I think Patrick Peterson, could, because, like I said, Patrick Peterson, when he entered the league, he was considered one of the better corners in his first few years. I mean, he was considered, at some people considered, one of the best with Richard Sherman in them. And then obviously, Cardinals have never really been that great a lot of the time. So and Patrick Peterson has never been, I feel like, as appreciated as other corners have been during those years. But he's always been a guy who always shows up to play every Sunday and usually can go against your number one receiver And listen, he ain't gonna stop him every game, but he's one of those guys you say we'll take our chances with Patrick Gardner.
He is, he's kind of, it's funny. It's like he is the defensive version of Larry Fitzgerald, and they play on the same team. Where, you know, they just are solid. They do their job. They were at one point in their careers some of the best to ever do it. And they're probably both going to, well, I know one's for sure going to the Hall of Fame. Patrick Peterson probably will go to the Hall of Fame. And they may go to the Hall of Fame without a ring. So I feel that. But this is going to be it for the fantasy. I'm sorry. This is not fantasy football. I don't know why my head is on that right now. This is it for the GSMC football podcast. And I'd like to thank you all for tuning in with us, you know, kicking it in with me and Brice on your afternoon commutes, your morning wake ups, or your evening chill outs. So please don't forget to rate and review us 5 stars, 5 stars. And don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms and come interact with us, hang out, talk football or anything really. I like talking about cooking. I don't know about Brice, but talk about us without anything on your mind. Anything on your mind, talk to us. All right. For the GSMC, this is Ethan, this is Brice signing out. See you all next week.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.